Yeah, man, a lot of therapists can really keep us sick. I've had my share enabling through therapy. Most therapists don't really get trained to actually hold the client responsible for their lives. And how many of y'all in here saw Ed and me last time we were sitting here, up here? Just raise your hand. Oh, good. Well, we got a bunch of new people, Ed. We can piss them off just as bad as we did last time.
John's here, so I want to try to piss him off again. Tell him it is never his wife. And it's never your husband.
Or your boss.
Yeah. It's always you. It works that way. Have you ever noticed that in all our relationships, how bad we want it to be them?
Yep.
And how hard we work to try to get it to be them. By God, when the big book says, if you want what we have and willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. Well, we're willing to go to any length to get our partner to do it our way. And they never do. So then we try harder. Have you ever noticed that? We're going to go to any length again. We will try harder. And if that doesn't work, we'll say, damn, I wasn't trying hard enough. Because what we're really committed to in our relationships is getting our way. Because we know that our way is the right way, and if she'd only do it my way, she'd be better. Do you ever notice how that works? And then we wonder why in the heck we end up with all this conflict in our lives. And the reason we end up with all the conflicts is we know, they don't. We have to educate them.
We have to explain ourselves.
And just explain to them how it works. Listen, we're married. Don't you understand how marriage works? You're supposed to do this.
Old idea.
Now, where did we get all this stuff that's running around in our heads? We get it from family, from friends. We get it from your culture, your schooling, your college, your therapy school, wherever
your therapist.
Your therapist, or wherever you go. They lied to you.
Yeah. Sorry.
And the reason they lied to you is because they're running their relationships on their character defects. How many times do you hear in your culture that you can get what you want? Anybody ever heard that? If you try hard enough, you can get what you want. Okay, let's see how that works. I want my wife to come home and I want her to cook for me every night. I want her to give me sex whenever I want it, and I want her to treat me exactly like my mother did. And she's supposed to take care of me just like my mother did. How many of you know my wife? Do you think that's a possibility for me?
No way. No way.
She's out there selling God boxes right now. She was not put here on earth to do things my way. Okay? The 12 and 12 tells the fact that he fails to realize is his almost total inability to form a true partnership with another human being. Why is that? 'Cause I'll go to any length to get what I want and they're supposed to. It never once entered my mind to think of what could I contribute to her? What could I do to make her life better? Is there something I can do to contribute to her well-being? Huh? Pretty much a foreign concept, isn't it?
Yeah, Ed, you know, in the last session we did here, somebody raised their hand and said, you mentioned that you wake up every morning now and you ask, how can I contribute to my wife? And she said, well, isn't that just codependency? And we barely had enough time to go back into that, but I think that's a pretty important distinction because that was a question I had when we were working together. And, you know, I spent years and years in CODA meetings and Al-Anon meetings where I learned to identify how my people-pleasing was unhealthy and my, dishonesties through the way that I acted. I didn't tell people my truth. I denied my truth, all that. My resentments and all that stuff. Well, it turned out when I got to Ed Mackey, he said to me that...
I pissed her off, too.
And I just now, I said, I think if Ed Mackey doesn't piss you off, you're probably not listening. So I just think that's an important distinction that it is it's in service to no one to lie to them, to say yes when we mean no, to do for them when there's nothing for us to actually give, and all they end up with is our resentment. And so when a codependent who's still actively codependent hears waking up every morning and being in service to my spouse or contributing to my spouse, the active codependent ears I had when I heard that said, but that's what I've been doing my whole life and nobody ever does anything for me. What did you say to me about that? How was I acting? I was being a brat, right?
Yes, you're being a brat.
Spoiled brat, I think you called me. I think you called me a spoiled brat.
Yeah. There's a guy in the program says if you don't want to get better, don't go see Ed Mackey.
Sure. Yeah. I didn't want to go see Ed because, like we said, he pissed me off. But what happened was I got to where, like Leo said, I was willing to go to any lengths necessary to get better. And it was like a lightning rod struck me one night when I was so hitting the bottom, crying and begging and saying, God, what do I do? You know, I begged you to put people in my life who could help me. And see, I'd met Ed a couple of weeks earlier. And, it was like, wow. I told you, go see Ed Mackey is kind of the thing I got back. No. But the thing about working with a 12-step coach or a therapist who's got 12-step as their foundation is that when I learned how to look at me and also look at those who out there pissed me off and see them as me too, like see them as the reflection of me, some part of me that pisses me off that I see in them. Then I had control over, and I say control like I had empowerment over my life. It was the only place I had power was over here with me. So, and that was pretty humbling, like to look at the guy, Ed, who was running this outrageous meeting where there were codependents, alcoholics, and addicts all in the same room together. That's totally, foreign concept and forbidden. And there's crosstalk. Oh, no, not allowed. We are not allowed to call each other on our shit. That's what I've been trained in. You cannot reach across that room and say, hey, you're still sick. Time to do something about that if you want to. But that little voice, God's voice is really quiet. We don't hear it like a booming, loud thing. Charlton Heston, it's not like, oh. I heard it tiny, like Ed Mackey. And I was like, no, he's an asshole. I hate him. He's mean to people that sit in that room. Those are sick, sad, depressed people, and he yells at them. I don't want him to yell at me. And it's like, yeah, but he's your best teacher. Go see him. And once I started doing that with Ed, I learned more than I ever did. And then I got to see that I can actually do that with everybody. Everyone who pisses me off. There's something for them to teach me. Like my husband. He doesn't piss me off nearly as much as he used to.
Mark? Whenever I'm disturbed, the 12 and 12 says, whenever I'm disturbed, there's something the matter with me. When there's something the matter with me, the appropriate thing for me to do is to call my sponsor. My wife is not my sponsor. Why do I want to burden her with my crap? That's not being in service to her, is it? Because she ain't my problem, she ain't my solution.
Yeah. And and that doesn't mean like we can't develop a language to be able to express feelings in a way that works either. First I'll work out my restlessness, irritability, discontent with someone like Ed or Mike or one of my other friends in this program. And then when I'm not upset anymore is when I will go back and speak to my husband. So one of the rules that I live my life and my relationship by now and train clients on is don't try to solve a problem when someone is upset. And that's like across the board. It doesn't have to mean when I'm not upset. It's anyone. When someone's upset, you cannot solve a problem. The only thing that's going to come is more problems. So I take care of myself. I face the ugliness that I am probably being in that moment, and then I do a very quick fourth step with it. Fifth step, talk to Ed, talk to Mike, and then after that, ask for God to remove it. He immediately removes it, and then I immediately have some either amends to make or someone I can serve at that point. And sometimes the amends, Mike talks about amends to myself, and that might sometimes look like me going back to someone who I feel has done something that doesn't work for me and say, when you said blah, 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 I got angry. And I started getting resentful of you, and I started taking your inventory, so, that doesn't work either. And in the future, though, I would prefer for you to ask me about that this way or that way. And I just did this the other day with my husband, and he's worked with Ed, too. So, you know what his answer was? He's so smart. He said, okay. Really simple.
But for those of you who haven't worked the steps, you do that in relation to each other. Okay? Because if I'm going to have a successful relationship, it can't be based on what I want, can it? It can't be based on my old ideas of how relationships are supposed to be. Because if I do that, I'm going to create conflict. And I've created a codependent trap for myself. Because in my sick thinking, they're supposed to meet my needs. I got bad news for you. You were given everything you needed to meet your needs the day you were born. That's a function of your relationship with your higher power, not a function of a relationship with somebody that you're involved with.
That's good news.
Okay? Because, and until, it says right there in the big book, many of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, but the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Do you know what your old ideas are? Everything in there.
Everything you know already. Everything you know already.
Everything you already know is already in there, and that's what you're running on, and it don't work, does it? So if I give up all my old ideas, there ain't nothing left. Then I get some new ideas. Of course, they'll become old ideas in time, but at least if I can get some new ones, maybe they'll be a little more empowering than the ones I let go of. But see, my old ideas about relationships were really created out of my social instinct exceeding its proper function, or my security instinct exceeding its proper function. And so all of this crap inside there is driven by what? Fear that I ain't going to get what I want. Well, you ain't. And it doesn't matter, because that's not your job here, is to get what you want. I'm not up here today to get what I want. I'm here today to perhaps contribute something to the well-being of somebody in this room. Now, I have to take this home. And I'm doing good, because I ain't been on smart-ass probation at home since last October. I'm working on it, though. She's not in here, she's out there, so I can talk. But what we're running on is my fear is driven by what? My self-centeredness, my dishonesty, and my inconsideration of others. It's really inconsiderate to demand that somebody else do things my way, isn't it? Am I respectful of them? Is that a loving thing to do? How many of you in here said, I want him to love me?
I used to.
It's very clear in St. Francis' prayer. It says it's better to love than be loved. Maybe you ought to start throwing some love out there and see what comes back, instead of trying to get some.
Well, I think there's an important thing about that I had to learn, that I cannot manufacture love. Liza cannot manufacture love. And neither can I get it from my husband, because he can't manufacture love either. And we human beings can get love from the source of love. I mean, like I use the metaphor of batteries, that we're all like little rechargeable batteries walking around here in this life, and we have to charge back up from the source. We try to use each other to get charged back up. It gives us a temporary charge, and there's not anything wrong with when someone's contributing, like Ed's contributing, that we can receive something from him. Ed has that to give because Ed's receiving it from his source, and then it stays full in Ed. If Ed tried to walk around giving that to everybody without having the source plugging in him and charging him, he'll get resentful really fast. So, and I know people are nodding, so there's some people in here who know what we're talking about. That when you get the source, when the literally source, that's like the origin. So when we get love from the place where love actually comes from and fill up with it, we can't, I always say, when I give something away in that way, then I can't help but get it all over me. So when we give it away, it keeps coming back to us. It's the only way I've ever been able to actually experience love. And I can say I'm the most loved wife on the planet, because I get to experience that love all the time coming back at me. Now when I see my husband restless, irritable, and discontented, you think I think he's a jerk and I'm in a terrible marriage and I should run because he's not treating me the way that I deserve to be treated? Not anymore. Now I just say, how can I contribute to him? Sometimes that means get the hell away from him, because I'm not going to be nice.
Mention something else that Liza mentioned earlier today, that our basic instincts of life, our security instinct, our social instinct, and our sex instinct, are fine as long as they're not exceeding their proper function. But when they exceed their proper function, I am no longer living my life, I am surviving my life. And there is a big difference. if I am looking out there to someone for security, which is what codependents do, then they're always going to be doomed to failure because security is a myth. There's no such thing. It's just an old idea that if I do this, this, or this, I'll be secure. You ain't never going to be secure. You're going to die. And besides, my wife ain't isn't responsible for my emotional security. That's between me and God. It's not up to her to satisfy my social instincts. That's me. She's not responsible for my self-esteem. How many have low self-esteem? Arrogant bunch, aren't you?
Oh, that blew me away when Ed told me that was arrogant. That sounds like that blew me away when you told me that my low self-esteem was arrogant.
Why would you treat a child of God that way? That's a way of playing God with yourself. That's arrogance. God loves you. You might well get along and start doing it yourself. Instead of all this arrogant crap about how you think you should treat yourself, like, I'm not good enough. I don't fit in. There you are, what you are. Be happy with you. You're perfect just the way you are. Everybody got that?
Yeah. Finally.
You want to live your life outside of those. You want to live your life as an adventure, not a huddle up in the darkness. I'm scared.
Well, we have to be willing to give up the payoffs we take for being a victim before we could become the responsible and free and happy and joyous human beings that we say we should be.
The only thing any of you have to be afraid of is your own thinking. That's the scariest thing in the world. My thinking damn near killed me a bunch of times. That's scary stuff that can go on in there. I know old John back there's heard this before. My sponsor told me if anybody ever screwed me the way I screwed me, I'd have shot that son of a bitch long time ago. Tells you in the big book, so our troubles we think of our own making. It's all you. That's hard to understand, isn't it? Now, all of these instincts that have exceeded their proper function are self-centered, dishonest, fear-driven, and inconsiderate, aren't they? And that's what we run our relationships on. It's self-centeredness, dishonesty, fear, and inconsideration. Does it work very well? Just suppose for a minute that in my relationship with old skinny bitch out there.
That's her name for herself, by the way.
You see a flyer out there that says, this is...
Head bitch.
Head bitch out there. That's right, head bitch out there. Now, if I treat her selflessly, honestly, fearlessly, and considerately, how do you think she responds to me?
She likes it.
Why, yeah. Now, when I treat her out of my character defects, what do you think I get back?
A bitch from hell.
And who created that bitch from hell to show up in my life? I did. And when that shows up, I have to make amends to her.
So you're saying when she's a bitch to you,
yeah,
and treats you mean,
yep,
you owe her an amends?
Absolutely. Because I created the space for her disturbance to show up. No, me.
So is anyone getting pissed off yet? I'm saying, is anybody out there getting pissed off by what you're saying?
Probably. I said, well, Liza, I guess we'll piss them off today. Huh? That's right. You know about that, don't you, Tony? Because your wife's got some good bitch training lately.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Sandy.
Yeah, you are.
Tony's like,
And it's real good that my wife doesn't take any crap off me, because I don't need some woman I can manipulate and control. I'd get too sick doing that. I'm an alcoholic and codependent, an adult child. I need somebody to tell me this is the way it is. She says no to me. She's not very gentle with me at all. But she's never mean.
she tells you the truth, which means
She tells
that
me the truth.
when she says yes to you, you know that it's real.
Yes, I do.
And trust that her yes is yes.
And I trust her implicitly. She has my power of attorney. She can do anything she wants to with me. She insisted on it before we got married. No, that's not true. That's not true.
I have clients sometimes who, well, let me back up. So, you know that the motto or the slogan, when you spot it, you got it. So I've seen it a lot with myself. And there's a good example of how I see it with people I work with. You know, I'll have a couple, and I'll sometimes see them individually. Other times I see them as a couple. And this one couple, I saw the woman individually, and she was complaining and complaining and complaining about how her husband's, you know, dishonest. And he will, you know, say things like, no, I did not do that, when she knows he did it. Like using the soap or something, you know, and left the cap off the toothpaste or left the seat up, and deny it, the toilet seat. And she, you know, he's a liar. He lies about the stupidest things, thinking that her whole marriage should end because of this. And then, you know, about 10 minutes into all that, I let her go on for about 10 minutes, and then I just turned the focus back on her and said, so how do you lie to him? And, you know, oh, that's, I have to lie to him. I mean, I can't say no to him all the time because he gets pissed off. And then I have to deal with him like that. And so I said, so your husband's lies are what's ending this marriage, right? And that's it. We have to really see that that stuff that we think is pissing us off out there, like the bitch from hell showing up in your life, could piss you off if you would let it.
Incidentally, she's been witness to the bitch from hell showing up in my life.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's scary. Ed calls it, she's all teeth and eyeballs. Isn't that how you say it?
Yeah.
I learned how to own my inner bitch from your wife. I did. I really did. Because now my husband knows my truth, and when he knows my truth, he can trust me. So as women, we really need to be, I'll speak all to the women here for a minute, but the men, you really should listen, because you want a powerful bitch for a partner. I guarantee you. You really, really do. You just may not know that you want it. But you want a woman to speak her truth to you powerfully. You want her to tell you no when she means no. Because when she comes at you with yes, it is so worth it. It's really worth it. It's worth it to have her choosing you as opposed to you manipulating her into choosing you. And women, it's worth saying no when you mean no, because when yes finally shows up, it's just the most powerful experience. I see those women, those bitches out there, who, you know what I'm talking about. That's right, Sandy.
There's some flyers out there on the next bitch workshop.
Yeah, I got enough practice. I started, a bunch of other people, including Sandy, started to ask me about that because I would talk about it in meetings. So, you know, I got to get in touch with that inner bitch. And after a while, enough women said, what's this inner bitch thing you keep talking about? I think I might need to learn it. I said, okay, well, we'll start a class and we'll do some work on it. Were you going to say something? Okay. I'm listening. Dad, sit down. That's an example of being a bitch, okay?
I taught her well, didn't I?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad you brought that up. So the question for the recording and for anybody who might not have heard it is, when she hears the word bitch, she thinks of the opposite of selflessness, honesty, courage, and consideration. And so we got to clear that up because that's confusing. And it's supposed to be that way. Did you know confusion is the perfect fertile soil for new growth? So we kind of, want to dwell in confusion a little bit. Don't want to totally clear it up too much. We want to leave you a little bit confused enough to have some willingness to be open to something new. But the idea is that women have been called a bitch for many, 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 many years. And, we talked earlier about where we learn these old ideas from, our culture, Disney, the powerful women. If you think back to the movies we've watched in our childhood and leading up to now, the really powerful women were usually the evil women, weren't they? And the word bitch will bring that to mind. But this is my attempt to take the word back and we can redefine it. That's part of our power too, because words are just created ideas. Words are just symbols, okay? They're not the thing itself. They're a symbol or a description of the thing. So we can actually own that there is a powerful inner part of us. And that when the bitch in us comes out, it is not the same thing as the asshole that I used to be before. So I'm inviting you kind of to redefine the word bitch. And when you hear bitch, not to think of it as that jerk, that selfish. You've seen it in others. It's much easier to see in all those people than me. But that jerky, take what they can get and not really think of others and just walk around, I want what I want when I want it. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about empowerment that comes inside of us. We were born with it. When we were children, we said, I want that. And we said no to that. And that was our truth. And then through the years and all that people-pleasing we learned how to do to survive circumstances, we ended up pretending and stopping telling the truth about, I want that and no to that. And so it's really simple. We have to get back to our inner truth. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about the inner bitch.
And being letting your inner bitch out to play means nothing more than you are an empowered woman who will speak her truth. Okay? My wife is never inconsiderate, selfish, dishonest when she's doing that, okay? For her to sit there and people please me would not be in service to me. That would be dishonest, self-centered, fear-driven, and inconsiderate. Telling it to me like it is the most considerate thing she can do for me. That is the most selfless thing she can do, is to risk telling me how it should be or how she sees things. And so when I say I create the space for the bitch from hell to show up in my life, that is my creation. For that I am responsible, and I need to make amends to her. As Liza noticed one day, she watched that happen. You want to tell that story?
Well, I'll give abbreviated version. Just that, his wife, I walked in one day for a therapy session and his wife was chewing him out, screaming, appearing to me to be abusive. But, and I thought that they were in a bad marriage, but it turned out that it was actually the result of Ed having basically acting his character defects out on his marriage. I had no idea of this. I did figure out later when he told me he had to make amends to her after that, and it blew my mind. And, what I learned from it was that, it's actually as old an idea as the Bible talks about, where if we eat from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, then we leave the Garden of Eden. And I hear that as a metaphor. It's about, like, if I'm standing there and my spouse was screaming in my face like that, I can know it's bad or good. Okay? And if I start getting in that world and I'm judging and assessing how that person's acting and being, then my focus is on them, it's outside of me, and I cannot serve that person. Well, Ed had his focus on him while this woman was screaming in his face, while she was all teeth and eyeballs. And he was focusing on himself and how he put himself in the situation to have this occurring. And it absolutely disappeared the problem.
If you'll notice, I just reached out and took her hand. And that's the only response I made, because I knew I created it and I needed to make amends to it. It's the same thing for children. The dynamics are the same. It doesn't matter.
Knowing it. React.
Well, we don't have time to just separate them into children, significant others, girlfriends, boyfriends.
But we can use
But it's the dynamics are the same. Codependency is the same. It doesn't matter whether you're codependent on a child, or the gentleman back there asks you, how do you know if you're codependent on a therapist? You can be codependent on anybody. Mike just talked earlier today about you can be codependent on porn. You can be codependent on anything you think is going to fix you. But it's not, because if I think that my daughter's going to do things my way, I've lost my mind.
I can speak to that too, because my children often have been the object of my obsession. And I'd say that, now what I realize is that when I'm being that way with my kids, I'm really robbing them of their opportunity to learn. And I'm thinking that I know better than them. And that's me playing God. And that's, that I actually am being unbelievably self-centered and very, very obviously dishonest, because I'm not God. And I don't always know better than my children. I think I do most of the time. But my children know a lot, and they know more than I'd ever give them credit for knowing. And also, it's so inconsiderate for us to rob them of failure too. That's the big one. That is so hard for codependent mothers and fathers, is to not let a kid fall down and hurt themselves, or a 30-year-old kid fall down and hurt themselves using drugs or alcohol because they need to hit that bottom they haven't hit yet. Mike, what were you going to say? Yeah. 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 Love it. Yeah. You're not responsible to meet your child's emotional needs.
You can always divorce her.
You could consider that you thinking that you have to meet your daughter's emotional needs is keeping her in jail. In jail, like in prison.
You're both.
Well, maybe that's where she needs to go.
As long as you,
yeah.
As long as you're in a codependent relationship, neither one of you is free. You're bound to each other by a shared psychopathology, if you wish to use technical terms. Bev, did we answer your questions a while ago?
Yeah.
Okay, you're clear now? Good.
I know some people in this recovery program, there may even be people right here in this room who have their lives saved while being in jail because they got sober and they got some 12-step recovery while they were there somehow by a miracle. And so, to think it would break your heart, I understand that. Knowledge-wise, I can get why no parent says when that baby's born, oh, what I want for this child is to go to jail at age 29. Wouldn't that be wonderful? But we're not God. We don't get to say what happens to our kids.
Hard. I can't talk anymore because my wife just walked in. You'll note there she is back there. It was all true.
The bitch from hell is in the building.
You'll notice when she came in, I called her my wife, and when she was out there, I referred to her as skinny bitch.
She calls herself that. Okay, I wanted to get back to the point made earlier about it's always me. And this is whether we're talking about being upset about our spouse, being upset about our children, adult children, or children. When I discovered this asshole sitting next to me, who I love, and the crazy group that he was running over on Wednesday nights, I never had considered, because I'm the codependent, I never, ever would have put myself in the same category as the alcoholics in my life. I just never would have done it. Because we've always segregated those rooms, AA, the Al-Anon, and I was even told many times for years that do not read the big book. And I understand the logic because, if I'm reading the big book, then I'll know exactly how to tell my father how to stop drinking. Okay, so I understand that logic. But, just to kind of wrap up what we're saying about it's always me, it's like I'm the one sick when I'm brokenhearted about something that's happened to my child. Now it's normal to grieve. Grief is a normal human emotion. We are allowed to feel our feelings, and the problem is when I'm sick and obsessing about my children or about my husband and his behavior, I am not present. When I'm obsessing about it, I'm not present. So I can't actually feel the honest feeling in there. If I could stop the obsessing, which I can't do, but I can create a space where God can take it away from me, then I could be left with feeling sad. And then I can cry about it, but there's an honesty about that grief that I'm not trying to change anything. I'm just crying. I'm crying like a child cries. Just present and honest. Because it's not the way I wanted it to be. Which of course is still self-centered, but that's humanity, that's survival. When we get hurt, we can cry. When we go on for years crying about the same thing, that's not healthy. That's not what we were put on this earth to do. We're here to serve. So I have to get out of my own way and put God in there first, which will then give me that ability to be present. And feelings may come. I mean, just because God's in my life doesn't mean I'm not going to grieve something. If God's not in my life, I don't feel my grief. And then I'm going to just poison opportunities everywhere to make a difference.
Okay, we got about... Yeah, come on, Sandy. The social instinct and the security instinct are pretty well linked together, okay? And they're both, if they're out of whack, either one of them, if one's out of whack, the rest of them will be too, chances are. And it's all driven by fear. And fear is all about, I might not get what I want, or what I think I should have. Okay? And so the way fear happens is you make up a story about the future. And then, since it's a story, it's fiction, and you believe it. And then you're scared. Well, guess who did it to you? The booger man ain't out there. It's in between your ears. It's your story that you're making up that you're scaring yourself to death with. Who's in charge of what hasn't happened yet? Somebody let me know. You all know. There you go. Are you God? Why, mind His business. He can do it just fine without you. Your business is right now, because that's all you can do something about. You are not in charge of what hadn't happened yet. Lady raised her hand back there.
Sure. Having hope wanting my way when I am living with active addiction. Ooh, that's such a good question. What the question is, when you're living with active alcoholism or addiction, is having hope the same thing as running on your character defects? Is that what you were asking?
Hope is about, I want this person to turn out the way I want him to turn out.
Yeah.
And he ain't going to. He's going to turn out the way he turns out. That ain't got anything to do with you.
But now, yeah, hope is the way, I make a distinction between hope and faith, because hope is about being attached to the way I want it to look. And the problem with hope is that when you get the picture in your mind that you hope it will turn out to look like, you cut off from any other possibility that could also be wonderful and awesome, maybe even 10 times better than you ever could have believed could be, because God would do it, not you. And you're so attached to that one picture, you don't see anything else but that. And when that other picture doesn't show up, something else great might happen, but you don't even notice it as great.
But hope really is driven by your character defects.
Hope's for suckers.
As I said, hope's for suckers. When you're here, and I was going to say, Liza told me one day that hope's for suckers.
Well, and I learned that the hard way. I'm not standing in judgment when I say that, because I was the biggest sucker of all, being attached to how I thought the marriage was supposed to look and the way my children were supposed to turn out and behave and the way my friends were supposed to be, and it just messed it all up.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean anything. But you can certainly have it.
It gets us out of our resentment.
My wish doesn't change anything. So it's okay to have it.
The way it should show up.
It would be really nice if this would happen, but say if it happens the way I want it to, it ain't going to turn out well.
Or, you know,
doing
sometimes
things my way doesn't turn out well. Is acceptance.
Yeah. The way it is the way it is, y'all. We get all obsessed with what it's supposed to be or what it isn't or what it shouldn't have been, and it's always going to be out there some other place. And it's only now and here.
17 in the big book. And acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. Well, you can do it however you want to do it, and that's okay. There's no
We
right
didn't say
or
it was
wrong.
wrong.
We didn't say anything was wrong.
Actually, nothing in here that we're saying is about right or wrong.
We don't deal in right and wrong. Okay, Barbara. That's right. Christy.
Would it be possible for some of y'all with questions to come up after the seminars?
Yeah, because Madalena said we're done, and she's in charge.
That is absolutely right. Can we give them a great hand?